Hey guys, and welcome to another similarly different episode. I'm your host, Yanina, and today I have a wonderful person. She is a PR it girl. And this year, actually, she stepped into the beauty world as well in PR. She has been known for fashion and working with many different brands from when she was in New York City and now even represents Mr. Law Roach. I have the beautiful, the wonderful, and the most intelligent
Thank you.
Velissa. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm super good. I'm a little tired, just coming off a Law's book tour, but I'm super excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you because I was telling you off camera that I know and I pride myself in knowing a lot of like brand reps and PR people and really just like gravitating to the women that are in business. And out of nowhere, a few years ago, I saw you, I met you, and I was like, where did this girl come from? And I've just been like so curious about you since then. And I've seen the trajectory since I've met you of your career just skyrocket, in my opinion. And I think that a lot of the times as women, we're hard on ourselves.
For sure.
We have these goals and we don't realize in real time how much we're actually advancing. So I want to say that.
Thank you. I talk about this all the time. Even obviously in the last few weeks, I've gotten so much love and support from colleagues or people that I've most recently met. And like, you do get that point of like imposter syndrome when you're like, I'm not where exactly I want to be, or I've had this setback, so I can't, relish in this happy moment or this, moment of success. So hearing you say that, I have been constantly reminding myself to just say like, this is gratitude, this is success, and it might not look or feel the exact way that you want it, but you have arrived, and treating people the right way, doing hard work, being honest with people and treating people well is like how you can extend your career and have new opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that doors are always going to open when people see your hard work and more than anything, your spirit, that you're willing, but that you're also willing to do it with still being a good person.
Yeah.
And I think it like shows with you every single time. Now,
Thank
for
you.
those that don't know you, let's take it back a little bit.
Sure.
So you're from Pittsburgh.
I'm from Pittsburgh originally.
And what made you go into the PR world?
I went to school for it. So I actually am one of those people using my degree. We always joke about, you went to college and now you like don't use it. But I did go to college for communications and advertising. I wasn't sure that I wanted to be a publicist when I was in school. I played basketball in college. So I played Division I basketball many, many years ago. But I knew like you go to school for communications, it's almost kind of goofy, right? Because they're like, what are you going to do with that? At first I actually wanted to be like you. I wanted to be a host. I wanted to be a sports commentator. But even back then it wasn't as frequent as we see it now today. And when I moved back to Pittsburgh right after college, I started like working in fashion on the retail side, which believe it or not actually was pivotal to leading to this moment. I worked at True Religion brand jeans at like the height of its popularity when it first came around. And little did I know I was doing like PR then because I was clienteling with like all of the athletes that were in the city, anytime celebs came in, positioning the brand to them. And I got to learn a lot about denim. Okay. And then in Pittsburgh, a store was open called Social Status, which has grown to this like major thing, especially down south. James Whitner was like the owner of this brand. He's grown the business to be a huge product, and they needed someone that knew denim. And they were like, where are we going to find, some rando, who actually knows denim? And I knew a lot about denim from working at True Religion. And we opened up this store in Pittsburgh, and it ended up being like the spot for like cool fashion, because Pittsburgh is not a fashion place whatsoever. But we had like Yeezys, and we were like had a Ralph Lauren account, and we had like sneakers and fashion like before it really took off. Okay. And then I was like bringing people into the store and creating events. So I was like doing the thing without knowing I was doing the thing.
Which I think is also so important because a lot of the times when kids are younger, even women, or let's say you just have to start in the bottom, right. I always say you have to start in the bottom somewhere. And people wouldn't think that you could make the most out of just working in a store.
Right.
But you really made the most of that and maybe not even noticed, but started creating a Rolodex for yourself.
For sure. For sure. And so once I was in Pittsburgh, I kind of had felt like I hit a wall. And I remember telling James, the owner of the store, like, I want to do fashion PR in New York City. And like I said it, you know what I mean? And I wasn't even sure exactly what that meant. I knew what I was doing on the local Pittsburgh level, but I wanted to take it up a notch. And so I then moved to New York City to get my master's degree, and I went to LIM College. And that school is specific to fashion business. So like, you're not looking at tech packs, you're not looking at fabrics. It's like, how do you, like some of my professors did PR at Chanel. International or did Omnicom at Mac. So it was very centralized about teaching you how to get out there in the industry and like working on projects that would ultimately turn into like real experiences. And so from there, we had to do a couple of internships where like you had to do them to graduate. I did my first one at Harper's Bazaar in beauty because I've always loved beauty, believe it or not. But then I was like, wait a minute, I actually don't want to be on the editorial side. And then my second one was an internship at D Squared. And because I had came in with like some sort of experience, I was a little bit ahead of like my peers as they were like in their early 20s, where I was like in my mid to late. I think I was like 26, 27.
Okay.
So I had experience and I just kind of went for it. I went hard. I worked really hard as an intern for my capstone project. And when it was time to leave, they're like, no way, we're going to make a role for you. And from there, I just kind of like rose up through the ranks and ended up like leading all of the United States for D Squared. So
wow. And how long were you there for?
I want to say 4 years I was there.
Okay.
And so my first project was like Beyonce's formation tour, like the very big black hat and the embellished bodysuit. Like that was one of the brand's like really big custom looks for her. So that was like my first project of like starting there. And then from there on, it went to like Rihanna's custom Met Gala shoes and just all these celebrity centric moments that, you know, I was able to create there. And that's when I really felt like, okay, I know what I'm doing and this is like what I want to be doing.
And when was the time that you were like, now I've hit the cap here?
Into 2020, I ultimately had, so if you know anything about that brand, as I just mentioned, two of the like biggest stars in the world, was like we were very celebrity centric, and I was spending a lot of time coming here to do like Oscars red carpets and a lot of the dressings. And we were, if you know anything about fashion, most of the headquarters are in New York City, and they either have like an office here or a setup here, or they need one, right? And so, especially if you're very heavy in celebrity. So I was talking to them about like having me come out here. I was ready to like live in LA because I was coming here so frequently to do celebrity dressings and working my retail store people to do PR work. And they're like, wait a minute, I shouldn't be doing this. And so we couldn't find something that like made sense. And that's when I kind of hit the wall with it. And then the pandemic came. And so then the world kind of slowed down. And during that time, I was like freelancing and supporting a lot of like minority brands that didn't have budget. I was doing it all pro bono, but just storytelling with brands who didn't have a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when we started the business. And that's when we were like, wait a minute, we could do this for other people.
Right.
And by the end of 2020, I was like, let's like really put this on paper with my business partner, Jayla, who's still in New York City. And that's when we started JXP Collective.
That's so crazy. And so when the pandemic hit, were you technically let go from D Squared because of the pandemic?
No, I was still working there.
Oh, okay.
I was still working there, but the work was so far and few between. We couldn't do editorials. We couldn't do celebrity dressings. Honestly, like my biggest strategy at that moment was like how we could protect our store because the stores were being like so vandalized and robbed in Soho.
Yeah.
And then like, what is the messaging that we were doing for the state of the world? There was the shootings, there was gun violence, there was, you know, so that was like the PR message and like bringing people in to help us tell like sort of philanthropic stories.
Right.
And then the business just kind of slowed in general. And so I was like able to step away. My former assistant, who's now the head of VIP at Amiri, he followed me. He thinks I'm his mom. I moved into a building. He literally just like the other day moved like across the hall from me. And I was like, hey, I'm moving to LA. And he's like, I'm going with you. And, you know, actually funny enough, I had like maybe 4 or 5 interviews with Gucci. So I was like, oh, I'm good. I got the Gucci job. I'm moving to LA. It's fine. And they like ended up hiring somebody else at the last minute. And that's when I was like, you know, this wasn't for me. Like, let me put my full focus and intent into the business.
Yeah.
And that's when it really like picked up for us.
I think a lot of the times when it comes into being an entrepreneur, there could be such great opportunities that come our way, but it's kind of like a little test to see how much do you really want to take the jump.
Yeah.
And I always see it as like, do you want the ladder to be able to cross the mountain, or do you want to actually jump? Because if you jump, I'll make you jump even further and even farther, and you'll be even more successful, but you just have to trust.
Yes.
And now when you went ahead and started the company, you knew it wanted to be PR focused fashion.
So it was PR focused fashion to begin with. Even during 2020 when we were working with a lot of different entities, we really got our start working with like, well, funny enough, in 2019 when I was still at D Squared, I would always take on like consulting projects and bring Jayla, my business partner, in. One of the projects that we kind of like really put the light bulb off is we did a project with Mike Epps, comedian Mike Epps and his wife, helping them to announce their wedding. He had a Netflix special that we supported, things of that nature. That's when we were like, wait a minute, we're doing the thing together. And And then from there, it just kind of went into fashion because that's what I knew, innately. And we worked with a lot of fashion brands. Even when I came out here to LA, a lot of LA-based fashion brands. And then as we grew the business, we started going into a little bit of personal PR and brand projects and like supporting different entities on that side, like Shea Moisture, and also like our relationships. We had strong relationships with Shea Moisture because Jayla used to be the head of digital there. So then they were like, okay, we need support. So like a lot of those relationships just came back full circle. And that's kind of how we started to branch out into beauty or tech or other elements outside of fashion.
And how did it come for you to meet each other and decide to be partners? Because I think partnerships are such an important thing.
Yeah.
I have heard so many stories of partnerships going great and partnerships falling apart.
Funny enough, Jayla was my intern. So I met her when she was about 14, 15 years old. We have a 10-year age gap.
Wow.
She was my intern at Social Status in Pittsburgh. She's also from Pittsburgh. And there was this group of kids that were literally children, like 14 and 15 years old. And they would come into the store and they'd beg to work there. And eventually the owner was like, let's just set up some sort of internship program. And I kid you not, like these kids at 14, 15 knew exactly what they wanted to do. So Jayla was always like, I want to do advertising. And she went to Penn State. And then when she was at Penn State, she'd come sleep on my couch in New York City. Like right now she's 20. She'll be turning, I believe, 29. But she has a resume of like a 45-year-old. Because when she would come to New York City, she would intern at YSL Beauty. She would intern at Nike. Like she worked at Lifetime. Like she did all these things. And she kind of knew. A few other kids were like, one of them was like, I want to do music. He's doing music. One wanted to be a photographer. He's like shooting Usher, and he's got an award at the British Fashion Council, and he shoots Harper's Bazaar. And they all knew exactly who they wanted to be at 14, which I thought was insane because I was like, when I was 14, I just wanted to like dribble a basketball and like date boys.
When I was 14, I thought I was going to be a dancer that was going to tour the world and be a choreographer eventually.
Of course, right? So it's like to look back at these kids and that generation almost to an extent, they're like at the cusp of millennials. They're just like super focused. And Jayla brought something to the business, like digital strategy. When I was in college, like Facebook was just starting and like we used it to check on our homework that we might have missed. Whereas by the time she got to college, it was like, wait, how can we optimize this? How can we monetize it? How can we push brands there? And so she brought all that digital strategy, and she always would say to me like, I want to work for you one day. And I'm like, if we ever do something, we'll work together. Never in a million years did I think it would happen so quickly. But yeah, we've been connected. Like I remember I did her makeup for prom, and like now we're full-fledged business partners.
God, that's so beautiful. And now that you've talked about digital strategy, I think one of the smartest and most pivotal things that I saw you do was jump on and not think twice about it and run when it came to the fashion tunnel.
Yeah.
Is it what do you say? It's an Instagram? Is it a whole company? It's on its own? Like, is it just the movement that you want to showcase? What is your goal and how did that even start? Because the way it happened from one day to the other and out of nowhere.
I'm still shook, honestly.
It's amazing.
Literally before coming here, I just got an email from Nike and they're like, come to this event with like the commissioner of the NBA and the WNBA. I'm like, how am I getting invited to this?
But I love now even more that you have such a background in basketball because it ties it all together. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, as you guys know, thankfully the world has started to catch on that female athletes are so important. And was it this season?
Yeah.
This season, the WNBA started showing their thing, doing all the fashion tunnel looks, and Little Miss over here decided to take it upon herself to create an Instagram channel to showcase all of these moments.
Yeah.
And it has skyrocketed. How long did it take until you started noticing the numbers were going insane?
I mean, I just did an interview with Bustle on Friday and she asked me, some similar questions. And I remember when it like hit 500, I was like, oh my gosh, like, because as we know, it's hard to grow social media.
Especially in 2024.
Yeah. Like in 2024 to the algorithm, the way it's set up to grow a channel, even when I've had clients, like we do some high level, like social consulting due to Jayla's background. And, they're like, I need more followers. I'm being shadow banned. Like, help me. And like, I'm like, it is what it is to a degree.
Right.
You know what I mean? You could post this much, you could do all of the best practices. It does not mean that the channel is going to grow. And so I remember when I hit like 1,000 or, I mean, first of all, I started the page in May.
Okay.
I started
Wow.
it like literally in my underwear on the couch after a long work day, like just watching the games. As you said, I played basketball. I started at 8. So it's always been a part of my life to some degree. And I just started it because just doing some social listening, like as a marketer, I got on Twitter the very first night that the season kicked off, and Kelsey Plum had on this like leather look, chest open, super sick look. And I kind of felt like it was going to be a moment. Also, funny enough, I actually pitched this to a client and they were like, didn't care. So they just like blew it off. And I was like,
now they got to come back with a price.
I was like, if you turn this into like a segment, you already have millions of followers. People will naturally catch on because you can put it in a way in which it makes sense for you. And they totally disregarded it and I brought it up to them because it was like the day of the Met Gala and Angel Reese went. And I'm like, we don't see basketball players get to go to the Met Gala. So this is going to be a thing this season. We saw Caitlin Clark wear full Prada to, the draft. Like, we don't see that, right? So I knew this season was going to have some sort of fashion element to it. And I really just started the page because, we have League Fits, we have Pro Trending, and they cover the men and the women. They cover multiple things. And I was like, I just want to make something that's specific to the women. And it kind of just went from there. And then it just became viral. Like, I had a couple videos go viral, and I actually started on TikTok. I'm terrible at TikTok. I'm a super boomer. And so then I made the Instagram page, and I didn't expect the Instagram page to go because I just naturally, again, the algorithm. And then eventually it just started and it just stayed consistent since. And I think I'm like maybe almost at 80,000 now. And I started the page in May.
I love that. I love that people are catching on. One of my really good friends, Angel, she follows the statistics, the careers, everything. And when I showed her the page she's in, she has her own production company and everything. She was like, what can I do for her? I need to work with her. I love that she's doing this. And I think that a lot of people, it just shows that it was your passion and that's why it's flowing so easily.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that for me, I started it to show that these girls can have brand connectivity. Like, I focus it on the stylists who I've always had strong relationships with stylists for many years from being at D Squared. So it was never about like me in any capacity. I quite honestly wasn't even going to say that I ran the page. I was just going to keep it super low. But I realized, like, once I said that I was doing it, people were like, I've been following this and I didn't know it was you. So I'm like, okay, fine. I will connect myself, like not showing up on the page. But then I started getting so much press. But, I had to let people know that, these girls make no money in comparison to what the men make.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if this just showcases their ability to connect with brands, to get brand partnerships, to offset their money, like some of these women have to like go get jobs now that the season is over. They don't get to just kick back and go fishing, like they say whenever the men take, they're out of the playoffs. They have to figure out like how they're going to financially be able to survive until the next season, ensuring that they're re-signed, et cetera. And so I've had such strong relationships now with so many of the players and stylists. I've even helped them get some brand deals. I've connected them to brands like Alexander Wang and figuring out like how they can make an impact. Some of these girls are also extremely, like, they're models. So we're now seeing them on runways and things like that. So I'm like, these are revenue generating opportunities that's what this page is about, outside of just, okay, these looks look good.
Yeah, and I think it goes down to the fact that at the end of the day, as a woman, we have so many different layers to us. And those layers should have different streams of income that we should be able to make money from, to be able to expand our career, whether it becomes that they become the face of a skincare brand.
Exactly.
Why not? They're sweating, they're running, they're athletes.
Absolutely.
What keeps them without acne?
Yeah.
Whether it's the clothes, like you said, in the tunnel, or what they like to wear outside of there,
Absolutely.
And I think it's so important because you're showcasing not only the fashion, but you're also showcasing the evolution of these people.
Absolutely.
And what they're gonna grow into and what they have the opportunity to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's beautiful because you created a lane that a lot of people, it was there and a lot of people weren't looking at.
Yeah. And I mean, the page is funny enough, like 80% men. So it's interesting. It's like the dynamic and the back end analytics of like what keeps the page going. I had a call with Instagram a couple weeks ago, and the call was not for me, but at the end of the call I said, I have to ask like a personal question. I'm like, I really want to know. I've obviously turned it into a case study, you know, to show other people. And I'm like, I really want to know what like makes the page go. Like, what is making this page successful? And, you know, and she took a look at it, you know, quickly high level. And she's like, you know, it's the ability to have shareable content. And I realized that like every day there's someone reposting it in stories, sharing it, etc. And I think, again, the connectivity of also showing who I was allowed me to connect with the players. So they knew that I wasn't like some creepy person just behind the scenes, like clipping up their videos. You know, sometimes the girls will say, oh my gosh, I love how you edited this. Like, can you send it to me? So like I've built that rapport as well. And, you know, now that I've came on the other side of it, I'm like, I truly am here to like champion you women and support you, because when I play basketball, this was not even possible, right?
Yeah.
And I've even brought in like some former WNBA players that I have relationships, and I'm like, you know, I've done some articles where I'm like, you need to reach out to these people too, because they were a part of the infancy of this, and now we're even seeing how like they're getting like reintroduced to partnerships and brand opportunities. And so it's just really exciting to see, because as you mentioned, like women's sports has came such a long way, and it's more than just watching them play the sport. It's like the personality of it all and the opportunities that they can get out of it.
And how have you dealt with getting, like, you got told no for that segment, but now you're seeing all these opportunities come up? How do you deal with that aside that, but in other lines of work for your company in the past, as a woman, as a Black woman? How do you deal with that today? And what do you do when those no's still today in your career, where you've had the success, you've had the clients? Is there something that you tell yourself whenever you get told the no, or how do you not let it stop you?
I'm super emotional. I'm a Pisces.
I'm a Pisces moon. So
yeah, so you got a little bit of it in there. I mean, I definitely am one of those people who takes things to heart, but I would say that I'm championed by like my partners. So we recently signed and brought on a former colleague of mine that you might remember. Well, you might have ran into him that night at One Size, but Dylan Powell.
Okay.
There was a point in, honestly, this year where like we really needed to restructure the business. We had a couple clients go on hiatus at the same time, you know, and it was like a shell shock, because it was not that like, hey, you guys aren't doing a good job. It was like financials for them, which means financials for us. And so we had to take a step back and really be like, wait a minute, like, what are we doing? How are we moving forward? And I would say between like Jayla and Dylan consistently just being like, you know, we can fret for a night, but in the morning you got to get back out there and believe. And I will say too that, as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, like you sometimes have this imposter syndrome. So like sometimes you take a certain no to heart, and then you're like, how do I overcome that? But the reality of it is that you sometimes have to just take a look in the mirror and say, like, these are all the things that are working. I definitely think gratitude is such a big part of that. Like, I consciously try not to speak negatively about myself, even when I'm making a joke. You know what I mean? Like, why am I saying that about myself? Like, if I don't believe that to be true, then it's not even necessary to joke about it.
Yeah.
So just trying to like remove negative speak. So like you said, I was in 4 rounds of that interview, and I was like, oh, I've met with Gucci. I mean, June Ambrose like set it up for me.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't like, I got it in the bag. You know, I'm moving to LA and I'm going to be working at Gucci. And funny enough, Gucci had reached out back to me like 6 months later, like, can we hire you on a project? And I'm like, no, like, go with the girl that you hired. And she ended up leaving. So funny how, you know, the tables turn. But, you know, I didn't take it to heart. I would say that I let the no's and the moments of having to regroup inspire me. Sometimes that process can take longer. Right? Sometimes I have to relish in the sadness of it all as an emotional Pisces. But once I get back up and get into overdrive, I'm like, okay, on to the next, you know?
And this year is the year that you guys really tapped into wanting, well, I say this, but I remember you talking about Shea Moisture, but I remember specifically on Instagram a few weeks ago that you posted something. I don't remember if it was like a screenshot of your notes or what it was, but you were saying, I want to work with a beauty brand this year. And then you did One Size.
Jayla. So Jayla loves beauty. Okay. She has that strong beauty background in terms of like tangibly working with beauty brands. And we've been blessed pretty much every year of the business to at least touch one beauty brand. And this year we hadn't. And at this point, you know, going into Q4, we're like, okay, but I always say like, write it down. I know it sounds corny,
I believe in that.
but I'm like, write it down, let it go. You know what I mean? Like, if it's what you want, if it's what you need, if you are a manifester, if you are a prayer, whatever your energy is, you have to just put it out there into a positive manner. And for me, it was one of those moments where she didn't even remember she said it to a degree. Right? Like, we had at the beginning of the year things that we wanted to do, tackle, dream brands of working with. And like, you know, we actually also technically did a Fenty beauty event with the WNBA. So like, just little moments that you sometimes, like, it happens so fast, you don't get to say like, thank you, God, like, we did this. And that's why I wanted to share with people that if you can think it, you could do it. I know it's like so Barney the dinosaur, like, you can be whatever you want, but you can, you know what I mean?
No, I believe it. I mean, Erykah Badu has that line as well. I literally just posted it a few days on Instagram where it says, write it on paper and see how real shit gets, right?
Yes.
And I grew up journaling since I was little.
Same.
And my journals are always letters to God. That's how I address it. I say, hi, God, or hey, God. Like, I just talk very personable to him. And I overthink so much.
Same.
I talk about so much on the podcast, how many thoughts I have a day. But the reason why I notice journaling works for me the best is because I'm writing it on paper to remove it from my brain.
Right.
So I'm doing like a few steps. I'm removing it from my brain so I can stop overthinking about it. But when I'm writing it to God necessarily in this, I am having to release it because not only am I giving it to him, theoretically,
that's powerful,
but I'm also writing it. So I'm like manifesting while writing it and being like, I don't know when it's going to happen, but here is my heart. This is why I want this. This is how I want it to happen. If it doesn't happen, I need you to give me a sign so I can understand the why.
Yes.
You know, sooner than later. Sometimes it comes later and it teaches us patience.
Right.
But in all due time, and every time it happens, something happened to me yesterday that I called my friend and I was like, bitch, look at this. I sent her a screenshot and she was like, we literally prayed in the car out loud. I was like, I know.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It's because you have to say it out loud, believe it, but let it go.
Yeah. And
the universe will do its thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I love that you guys have been doing that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't not just one size event. Okay.
Oh my gosh, yes.
This was like a one size tour.
Yeah, it was.
It was crazy.
It was incredible. Dylan, again, who we just recently brought in, has had a personal relationship with Patrick for many years. And funny enough, I was like, I think, again, we had that conversation with Dylan, like who we want to work with this year, what's left of the year. This was a couple months ago. And like the type of clients that we want to work with, you know, like we had to shed a lot. This year to me was about literally starting over in so many senses. Like we were in spaces that didn't feel comfortable, didn't feel confident, stalled out, was not appreciated, whatever, right? Like we needed to regroup.
Yeah.
And so I remember I was like, in Ralph's, like literally in Ralph's in like sweatpants, AirPods, like just grabbing a couple of things. And Dylan's like, Patrick wants to talk to us now. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. I'm like running home, throwing my groceries in. And we had like just a beautiful conversation with him. You know, he wasn't, a lot of people, like Dylan has done so much in the industry. They're like, we don't know what you do. We don't know where you work. We just know you do the things. And he's a connector of people. And so we had a beautiful conversation with Patrick and his team. And we're like, just think about us for an opportunity if you have one. And he, as you may know, like Patrick is incredible.
Yeah.
Like he is I can't even like honestly articulate a word as it relates to like who he is as a person, but also his business mind and like his application to the business as it relates to working with Sephora, but also like his own goals and like where he wants to take the brand. And so this was one of their first ever owned and operated events that they've put on.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been to a one size event before.
And so like they've done things with Sephora, but never like one size produces said event.
Right.
And so we went to them and we're like, this is all that the services that we offer because we are so much more than PR. You know, we do events, you know, we used to run all the events for Patron, etc.
I think I met you the first time at a beauty counter event.
Yeah.
At Newhouse.
So we did, Jayla and I did that event. And so we do events, we do talent, we do social, we do so much. And we're like, this is all that we do, but you can call us for one piece of this. And that was the moment. And so they're like, we need help with talent. We want to help build these rooms. We're doing a drag event. We're doing a makeup restock event. We're doing Spencer's masterclass. We're doing Patrick's masterclass. We're doing an OG beauty event. At first it was 10 events, believe it or not. And they had 2 events in Irvine that same weekend. So they were literally on tour.
Yeah.
And we were like, how can we segment this and how can we make it special? They did friends and family. Like, it was a 2-week tour, to your point.
Yeah.
And we were just so grateful to come in there. And like, as we know, we've been to so many beauty events, but to me, that event felt like I was at like a family kickback. Like, their team, everyone that was involved, like, it didn't feel like your typical stuffy LA event. Like, it just felt like a fun moment.
I loved how the amount of events that you guys had that week, they all felt individual in their own, but they all felt very intimate.
Yes.
So it was a grand production. There was things to the masses. Everything was done at such a high caliber. Everything looked gorgeous, but it was an intimate space with intimate people where you could all talk and meet. There was no, like you said, no stuffiness, no people looking at you weird.
Yeah.
It wasn't packed where you couldn't move, but it also wasn't empty. It was very full.
Yeah.
But with just the right amount of people. It was crazy. And then there was enough activations where you could keep busy and you wouldn't be bored, but you could still talk to Patrick at any given moment. He was accessible to everyone and anyone, any of the times that there was an event.
And we, you know, he was like, we need to make sure like every event has its like specificity, but also including people who matter to the brand. So like when we did Patrick's masterclass, we did some research, right? Like we use our databases, we get on social media, and we were finding like some niche makeup artists, right? Or people who have affinity to beauty. And I remember I was at Usher that night and people were DMing me like, hey, I got this invite. Is it real? Are you sure I should be here? And then literally those women showed up to the masterclass the next day. And some of them were like in tears. Like, are you sure I'm supposed to be here? Like, this isn't spam. Like, how did you find me? And like, I'm again, emotional. So like, I'm about to cry because for them, this event was like life-changing. They're like, I would never imagine that I would be able to be at something like this. Like, I don't have 5,000 followers. I have 3,000 followers. I have 1,000 followers. And he was like, I want people to appreciate this experience and take something from it. And again, that's what I like love about Patrick.
But I also love, and I will say about the production and the publicist in this, which would be your team, is that you guys didn't sway him away from it, because so many companies would come where a brand owner would go to a publicist, to a production company, to a PR agency and say all these things, and they would be like, well, for you to want success, we're going to have to be smart about this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I actually had recently a friend tell me that she had to uninvite people at a brand event.
Wow.
Because the person that came on to the team of the brand said anybody under 100,000 doesn't need to be at this event.
Yeah.
And I was like, girl, did you want to invite? And she goes, I'm in tears because this is what I'm told to do in my position and I have to listen, but these are humans.
Yeah.
And I think that if you look at who you want to have at an event based off followers rather than based on what that person will do for you for free out of being special and having that moment of not only you're validating them, you could be validating their inner child, their success, their career. They are going to be vendetted to you for a longer time than any money can give.
Yeah. And that's how I felt about these girls. Like, it was so important to have Nano to Mega, right, involved in this event. It was important to find some girls that might want to drive in from Irvine for this one special moment that they're not on every brand's typical copy paste, you know, mood board for the type of talent. Because again, like, not to be, you know, the PR girly for Patrick in this moment, but makeup is one size.
Yeah.
It's not just the girl that has 100,000 followers and lives in Malibu and drives a Porsche. Like, it's for everybody. And so that is his core messaging. And we wanted to ensure that we could deliver for him in that way. And again, like, the girls that came out that were just like, thank you for thinking of me. Like, I'm so proud to be here. And again, Patrick took pictures with every single girl. Yeah. He made sure he talked to them. He was available. You know, I made sure your girl, her information was given to the PR list. Like, it was meant to be a fun family vibe kickback that you just get this moment to get a bunch of free cool products, you know? So I loved it. And honestly, it was one of the best events that I've ever worked on.
That's so beautiful. And now that you've done that, is there a goal that you have until the end of the year?
Actually, I mean, we're having some really, really great conversations with a couple of brands. I never imagined to be having like so many like new business conversations in Q4, but we're really trying to set up the new year to like come out with a bang. As you know, we've worked a lot in the spirit space. Like Dylan and I used to work very heavily on Patron together. So we're really targeting some spirit brands that, because we do events naturally, like it comes to us in our sleep, and some fashion brands, and also really working with the WNBA.
I love that.
So that's really like a key sort of goal for me, is like helping these girls who are also creating beauty brands, fashion brands. Like that's what I've learned. Like these girls have their own entrepreneurial spirits as well, that they're like, okay, wait, I don't want to go get a job. I want to launch my clothing brand. You know, they have their own aspirations. So I've been really working with them pretty closely as well. And so for me, that's kind of the goal, is like, how am I pouring back into these women who want to amplify next season as well? So that's kind of it.
How do you pour back into you?
That is a good question. People ask me that all the time. And I struggle to answer it sometimes, just because I do work a lot. But I'm such an easygoing person. Like it's the small things for me. Like just when I can shut the phone off and just sit on my couch with like food or watch a good movie is like my rest and my downtime. I love concerts and music. I'm even someone, like, especially when I lived in New York City, that I like go to a show just by myself. I feel like, funny enough, I haven't been able to prioritize myself that much in the last couple of weeks, months. But I think as holiday starts to pour in, I actually want to prioritize spending more time with my family, because I'm on the West Coast. My family's all on the East Coast. Like I haven't made every Thanksgiving. I haven't made, every Christmas in the last few years. So I definitely want to divvy up some time there as my parents are getting older, and just like spending some time there. But I'm very basic, if you can believe it. Like it doesn't take much to like bring me peace.
Okay, so for the younger girl that may be watching, she's 5-10 years younger than you, Jayla.
Yeah.
If she was to ask you, I'm doing this on my own and you guys weren't partners, what would you tell her if they look up to you to do differently, to have maybe a smoother journey and transition through everything?
I would say for sure, try to remove doubt and fear. I think it sounds, again, a bit corny or cliche to say that. I remember that I planned to move to New York City in my very early 20s. And I kind of let like my circumstances, the passing of my nephew, my family's fear of me leaving little Pittsburgh, like hinder me and slow me down. I was in a relationship with a guy I knew I was going to marry, and I knew that was how I was going to spend my life. And in the back of my head, I'm like, he's going to hold you back from your dreams. Is this the life that you want to live? I also come from a space where like a lot of the girls that I grew up with, and I mean this in the most respect, like they're not necessarily happy with where they're at, whether that, again, life or circumstances may have kept them in a place. And I've always chased after the thing. I just wish I would have sometimes started a bit sooner. So like me coming to Los Angeles, the timing of it felt right. Again, I thought I had a job coming and all of these things, but I wasn't afraid of the risk. And I didn't find myself being able to take those risks until my late 20s, early 30s. I don't have any regrets, but I also wish that I would have made decisions for Velissa. I didn't used to listen to Velissa as much as I do now. And like, I know that comes from maturity and growth and life experiences. But to your point with Jayla, I'm so hard on her at times, because I'm like, and I've told her this, I'm like, I'm trying to save you from any mistake, heartache, or hardship that I can, because I see so much of myself in you. And so if I can give you this hard conversation or tell you like, check your boyfriend or whatever the case is, so that you don't have to deal with something in the way in which I would have or did, I just try to encourage her to do that. And honestly, to relate it back to Jayla, I've watched her bloom. She was this very timid, quiet, introverted girl, and I connected her with all of my fun friends in New York. A core group of people who like pour into who she is. They're not bitchy, they're not petty, they're supportive, they're genuine. And like, I've watched this girl grow, right? Like she did the full tour with Law, and Law was like, I've gotten nothing but amazing responses about her. And I said, you see where you've come? Like you wouldn't have been able to do that many years ago. I said, but I challenge you to get into therapy, to focus on your mental and physical health, like to look at yourself in the mirror. She said her therapist the other day said to her, like, you've became name all these things. And I said, that's great to hear. I said, but I've always saw you as that. So I don't see that for you. I see you as this champion. And so I'm like, just go for it. I'm like, you're, turning 30 soon. Like, just go for it now. You don't have anything to lose. You can always fall back on friends, family, etc. Trust your heart and trust what's in your mind and soul and just go after it for sure.
I love that. How have you found to be the dating world with having a company, being so forward focused in your career and independent?
I haven't. Like,
are you on the dating apps?
I was.
Okay. Did you have success in any of them?
No.
Me neither.
I went on one dating app date with this guy at Soho House. So I was like, hey, you can just meet me here. And he's like, I don't have a membership. I don't know he didn't even know what it was. And that's when I felt kind of like a douchebag because I'm like, first of all, I think that's the difference between New York and LA, right? When I lived
but why did you make the place? Why didn't he? Yeah.
I don't remember. I felt like he wasn't, like, it was like a situation where I felt like he couldn't take the lead. Oh, I remember actually what it was. He was like, let's grab like a green juice. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, we could get a juice. And then he was like, well, meet me at like Whole Foods. And I was like, no.
Oh, God.
So but I was like, let me see it through and let me go somewhere where like I can protect the space. Yeah. And so that's why I picked it. But long story short, I feel like when I was in New York, and this is not a bad thing. Like, my friends in New York were a melting pot of people. They weren't just publicists and fashion people. One of my friends worked at the MTA and another friend just did TV. Like, it wasn't like we're here. A lot of your friends are somehow connected to the industry.
Yeah.
So I felt like dating there was a little bit more normal to a degree because like you might meet the guy that's like, yeah, I work on the highways on the weekend. And you're like, okay, I could date this guy, right? Whereas here I felt like a douchebag when I took the guy who wanted to go to, like, didn't know what Soho House was. Cause I'm like, how do you not know what Soho House is? Like, we went to leave and he went to pay and he pulls out like cash. I'm like, you can't, where's the cash register? This is Soho House. Like, you need a credit card. I was like, I'll pay. Like, it was literally that. And I knew, like, I like checked us out on the app and I like was like, bye, my guy. And that was it. And I was just like, I can't do this.
What about him attracted you to him?
I mean, he was good looking. He was tall. I was like very superficial. But when we got there, it was like, yeah, this isn't going to work.
You guys are just like in two different planets.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't need a guy that is, okay, he has a Soho House membership.
No, yeah.
That's not who I am whatsoever. But I mean, I do want to have some things in common, I guess, to a degree. I haven't been focused on it really that much. Like, I've had some dates like as such, but I can't say that my focus is there right now. I am a lover girl through and through. Like, I have my goals of like wanting to be married to one person. I'm super old school, traditional, monogamous. Like, that is me. And I don't want to ever say that like I have to be so career focused that I can't have both. But I do know that it can be challenging in the field, and like my work ethic is crazy. Like, the last 2 weeks have been 14-hour days where I'm not looking up from my phone or my computer, or I'm just stopping to go to the bathroom and have a snack. And I know that that can be challenging for some men when they're like, okay, girl, log off. Like, let's, have our time, where I'm not necessarily willing to give that up in full at this moment.
Well, at least you know, and you're being honest with yourself. But I think also it's just hard in today's society to be able to date somebody and be such you can be a feminine woman. Yeah. But the fact that we are in our masculine energy to really get shit done. Yeah. It's a really hard.
It's very hard.
Space to be in, and for people to understand that while I'm being masculine right now, I'm in my work mode. Yeah. But if you bring out the feminine in me, I will be the lover girl that I am, but absolutely. I can't showcase 24/7 the lover girl because I got things to do and I need people to take me serious.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's perfectly put. I mean, I am, again, somebody who's super whimsical, super romantic. Like, I want to be able to 1,000% be in that feminine energy when I'm with a man that I love or care about. And so also, if like I'm not able to be in that space with someone, then it's not going to work either. Yeah. Because I'm like, I have to be this psycho person at work. I'm in arguments. Like, that's what I said. I'm like, I argue for a living. You know what I mean? I'm always challenging something or reworking something. So like, obviously when I log off, I just want to be romanced, wined and dined, cuddled, if you will. So like, I don't have time to be that in both spaces. It wouldn't work.
No, I feel it. But I say one of your things that are going to be in 2025 is going to be some romance in your life.
Manifest that for me, because I'm ready.
Yes.
Yeah.
Times so much more success, so much more opportunities, partnerships, expansion in all the sectors of your life. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. And same.
And I love seeing everything that you're doing in all the elements. And I know that this is just like the beginning for you, even though it might seem at times monumental and sometimes it might not because you're in it. I just want to remind you. And if you guys have not checked out the Instagram page, please check it out, as well as follow her.
Thank you.
And be in tune because she has everything coming for you guys and she is not taking her foot off the gas.
I'm not. Thank you so much for having me. This has been like a blessing. And I just wanted to say that last part that you said is God, because sometimes, again, you don't necessarily hear it for yourself, but you pouring that into me means more than you actually know. So I appreciate you so much for having me here.
Of course. Well, I hope you guys got some gems from this in business, in sports entrepreneurship, in womanhood. And until next time, this is the end of this episode. Bye.
Thank you.